It's strange how headlights can make you feel safe until they stop right behind you and never turn off. That night, I learned that feeling safe on an empty road is just an illusion. This happened about a year after I moved away from Denver. I was driving for a courier company then, delivering documents and small packages overnight between towns. It was boring work, but I liked the quiet. Most nights it was just me, the radio, and miles of empty highway. That night, I left a drop-off point in a small town called Ridgefield around 10:45 p.m. I remember because the gas station clock on the way out blinked that exact time. My next stop was about 2 hours away, down a long stretch of Highway 6. The kind of road that cuts through open plains with no lights, no houses, nothing but the sound of wind through the cracks in your windows. I had coffee in a thermos, music low, everything felt normal. Until it didn't. Around 11:30, I noticed a set of headlights appear in my rearview mirror. That wasn't unusual. The road connects a few towns, so every now and then, you'd get a passing truck or another courier. But this one felt off. It was a small car, maybe a sedan. I could tell from the low, wide beam of its lights. At first, it stayed about 100 yards behind me. I figured they'd pass eventually, but they didn't. They just followed, mile after mile. I turned off the radio to listen for the engine. Sometimes that helped me tell how close someone was, but all I could hear was the faint hum of my own tires. After a few minutes, I tried slowing down, just a little, to see if they'd pass. They slowed too. I sped up. They sped up. I remember this tight, uneasy feeling creeping into my chest. My hands started to sweat against the steering wheel. There were no exits, no gas stations, just black roads stretching out into nowhere. I checked my mirrors again. The car was closer now, maybe 40 yards behind. Its headlights were steady. No swerving, no flashing. Just there, watching. After another 5 minutes, I saw something ahead. A pull-off area with an old rest stop sign, half covered in dirt. I decided to turn in. Maybe if I pulled over, they'd just keep going. The gravel crunched under my tires as I slowed down, steering toward the edge of the lot. The car behind me followed. They didn't pass. They pulled in too. About 30 feet back, headlights still shining through my rear window, flooding the inside of my car with white light. For a second, I just sat there, breathing hard, trying to think. Then I reached for my phone. No signal. I turned my head slightly, trying to see past the glare. I could make out a dark shape in the driver's seat. Maybe wearing a hat or hood, I couldn't tell. I waited. Nothing happened. The other car just sat there, idling. I thought about getting out and confronting them, but something in my gut told me not to. I don't know how to describe it. That heavy, instinctive dread that presses down on you when you know something isn't right. So instead, I started my engine again and pulled back onto the road. The car followed. At that point, my heart was pounding. The stretch ahead was 20 more miles before the next town. I kept thinking, maybe I should floor it. Maybe I should stop completely. Maybe flash my hazards. Anything. But I just kept driving. And then out of nowhere, the car's headlights turned off. Just darkness behind me. For a few seconds, I couldn't see anything in the mirror. Just black. My mind was racing. Were they still there? Did they pull over? Then suddenly the lights came back on. Right up behind me, I yelled out loud. My whole body jolted. The car was maybe 10 feet from my bumper now, blinding me. I remember gripping the wheel so tight my fingers hurt. I wanted to cry or scream or do something, but I couldn't even think straight. And then it got worse. The car began to drift, left to right, like whoever was driving wanted to make sure I knew they were there. I pressed harder on the gas. My van rattled as the speedometer climbed. For the next 5 minutes, I drove faster than I ever had on that road, praying I wouldn't hit a deer or blow a tire. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the headlights vanished. Gone. I slowed down, looked around. Nothing. The road behind me was empty. It didn't make sense. I should have seen their lights fading, at least. But there was nothing. By the time I reached the next town, my hands were still trembling. I pulled into the only open gas station and went inside. The cashier, this tired old guy, looked up and said, "Long night, huh?" I told him someone had been following me down Highway 6. He frowned and said quietly, "Yeah, you're not the first one to say that." I asked what he meant. He said every few weeks someone came in shaking, saying a car tailed them out there, always turning off the lights, always vanishing before town. But here's the part that still messes with me. He said the last guy who reported it had come in a few months back, describing the same thing. A small sedan, dark windows. The police found that man's car 2 days later, off the side of Highway 6, engine running, driver's side door open, no sign of him anywhere. I left that job not long after. I don't drive at night much anymore, but sometimes when I'm on a dark stretch of road and I see headlights appear in the mirror, I still feel that same weight in my chest. And every time they disappear, just for a second, I hold my breath, because part of me wonders if they're really gone, or if they're just driving without the lights on, right behind me. It's strange how silence can feel louder than any noise. That's what I remember most about that night, the silence, and the sound of my own heartbeat when I realized I wasn't alone in my house. It happened about 3 years ago, when I was living just outside Denver. I had a small one-bedroom place, quiet neighborhood, kind of tucked away at the end of a cul-de-sac. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I worked from home back then, doing graphic design, so I spent most nights in front of my laptop, music playing softly, lights dim. That night it was a little after 11:30 p.m. I just finished a project, grabbed a beer, and sat down to watch something before bed. The neighborhood was dead quiet. No cars, no barking dogs, nothing. Just the low hum of my refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house settling. Then, maybe 15 minutes in, I heard something, a dull tap, then another. It sounded like it came from the living room window, the one that faced the street. I paused the show, listened, and didn't hear it again. At first I figured it was just tree branches scraping the glass, but there was no wind that night. Still, I tried to ignore it. I turned the volume back up and leaned back on the couch. Tap, tap, tap. That time I knew it wasn't the house. It was rhythmic, like someone testing the glass with a finger. I muted the TV. The sound stopped. I don't know why, but I whispered out loud, "Hello?" I don't even know what I expected, but no one answered. After a moment, I walked to the window and peered through the blinds. Outside was still. The empty street, the yellow street light down the block, the faint outline of my mailbox. Nothing. But there was this one strange thing. In the faint reflection on the glass, I could see my living room behind me. Couch, lamp, the TV frozen on the pause screen. And right behind my shoulder, I thought I saw movement. I spun around, nothing, just shadows. I stood there for a minute, staring at my own empty room, feeling ridiculous. Finally, I shook it off, laughed under my breath, and went back to sit down. But before I could, there was a sound that made my stomach drop. The front door handle clicked, just once, like someone tested it. I froze. My front door had one of those loose handles that rattled slightly if you touched it. It wasn't subtle. I knew that sound. Every nerve in my body went cold. I didn't move for a few seconds. Then I reached over, turned off the lamp, and waited. The darkness was thick. My eyes started to adjust, and I could just barely make out the faint orange light coming in from the street. Then I saw it, a shadow moving across the frosted glass by the door. Someone was standing outside. I didn't breathe, didn't even blink. They just stood there for maybe 10 seconds, long enough that I started to count in my head. 1, 2, 3. Then softly the handle turned again. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but I didn't hit call yet. I was scared it would make a sound. After another moment, the shadow shifted and slowly moved away from the door. I crept toward the peephole. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep my eyes steady. The porch was empty, But then, just as I was about to back away, a face leaned in. It was so fast I almost didn't process it. Just a flash of pale skin, a dark eye, and this awful grin, pressed right up against the glass, staring straight through the peephole. I stumbled backward, fell against the wall, and dropped my phone. When I looked again, he was gone. I finally hit call, whispered to the dispatcher what was happening. They said officers were nearby and on the way. While I was waiting, I locked myself in the bathroom with a kitchen knife. I could still hear faint creaks, floorboards shifting, or maybe footsteps. It was hard to tell. Then the motion light outside flicked on, and through the narrow bathroom window, I saw him again. Standing in my yard, facing the house. He wasn't moving, just watching. When the police arrived, maybe 7 minutes later, they found nothing. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, nothing on the doorbell cam except static. They checked around the property, shined flashlights, and said it was probably some drunk or a prank. But I knew it wasn't that, because the next morning, when I went to take the trash out, I saw something on the glass by the living room window. Right at eye level, in the condensation from the night before, were fingerprints. Not smudged, pressed carefully, like someone had been leaning there for a while. And below them, just faintly drawn with a fingertip, was a smiley face. For weeks after that, I couldn't sleep without every light on. I moved out a month later, but I still catch myself checking windows before bed. The thing that really haunts me, though, is that my neighbor across the street had a security camera pointed right at my house. When I asked if he saw anything that night, he told me the camera caught one frame before cutting out. It showed a man standing by my window, and right before the feed glitched, he turned his head and smiled directly at the camera. There's something about working alone at night that changes the way you hear things. Every creak feels louder. Every sound means something. And sometimes you realize too late that you're not the only one awake. Back in 2022, I was working the front desk at a small roadside motel just outside a town called Glenbrook. It was one of those half-forgotten places, 15 rooms, one flickering sign, and a smell of old carpet that never quite went away. The owner lived out of state, so most nights it was just me, a pot of coffee, and the faint buzz of the vending machine lights. I used to bring my laptop to pass the time. There were rarely guests after midnight, so I'd sit behind the counter watching videos or reading. The front office had a wide glass window looking out toward the parking lot. From there, I could see every room, lined up in a row, with old brass numbers nailed to the doors. That night, I started my shift at 10 p.m., like always. It was raining, that slow, steady drizzle that never quite stops. We only had 2 rooms booked, Room 7 and Room 12. Room 7 was a middle-aged trucker who checked in early, said he'd be gone by dawn. Room 12 was a quiet woman who came in around 9. She looked tired, barely said a word, paid cash. By midnight, the rain got heavier and I'd finished my coffee. I remember leaning back in the chair, half asleep when I heard it. Ding. The motion bell by the office door chimed softly. The one that goes off whenever someone steps into the lobby or passes too close to the window. I looked up. No one there. Outside, the parking lot was still. Both cars were parked where they'd been all night, the trucker's rig and the small blue sedan from Room 12. I figured maybe the wind blew the door just enough to trigger the sensor. But a few minutes later, I heard another sound. Creak. 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 It was the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the second-floor walkway. The motel was only 2 levels, and I was on the ground floor. I checked the monitor by the counter, an old security system with grainy black and white feeds. One camera covered the hallway above. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving slowly down the corridor. It wasn't the trucker. He was in a downstairs room, and the woman in Room 12 hadn't left her car once since she checked in. Whoever it was, they weren't carrying luggage. They were barefoot. You could tell by the way they walked. Slow, deliberate, heel to toe. I watched, frozen, as the figure stopped in front of one of the doors. Room 12. They just stood there, for almost a full minute. Then I quietly leaned down toward the door handle. The feed flickered. When it came back, the hallway was empty. I remember whispering to myself, "What the hell?" I tried calling room 12 to check on the guest. No answer. After about a minute of hesitation, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the rain. My shoes splashed against the puddles as I looked up toward the second level. The walkway was empty, glistening under the yellow light. Still, something didn't feel right. I climbed the stairs slowly. Every step echoed. When I reached room 12, I noticed the door was slightly open, just an inch. The "Do Not Disturb" tag hung sideways on the handle. I knocked gently. "Ma'am?" "It's the front desk, nothing." I pushed the door open a little wider and shined my light inside. The room looked normal. Suitcase by the bed, lamp still on. The sheets were pulled back, like someone had been sleeping there. But the bathroom door was closed, and from behind it, I heard the faintest dripping sound. "Hello?" I called again. No response. I took a step closer. The air inside was cold, like the AC had been running for hours. The mirror by the bathroom reflected part of the bed. But what caught my attention was a shape on the floor near it, something dark. I raised my flashlight. It was a shoe, a woman's black shoe, soaked, sitting alone in a puddle of water by the bathroom door. That's when I noticed something else. The carpet by the door was wet too, like someone had been standing there dripping. I swallowed hard and reached for the bathroom handle, but before I could touch it, the sound of footsteps echoed again, this time outside, right above me. Slow, dragging steps across the roof. I froze. There was no attic, no access up there, just a thin layer of ceiling tiles. The footsteps moved from one side of the room to the other, right above me, and then stopped. I backed out, heart pounding, and closed the door quietly behind me. I hurried down the stairs and called the local sheriff's number we kept behind the desk. It rang for what felt like forever before a deputy picked up. I explained what was happening. Someone walking around, guest missing, door open. He said a unit was on its way. While I waited, I kept watching the security monitors. Every camera feed showed the same thing. Empty walkways, quiet lot, still rain. Except one. The feed facing the back stairwell flickered again. For a split second, you could see a shape, wet, barefoot, long hair sticking to the face, walking away into the darkness. By the time the deputy arrived 15 minutes later, room 12 was empty. No guest, no luggage, just that one shoe and a wet patch of carpet. He asked me to pull the footage, but when I tried, the system froze. Every file from that night had been corrupted, except the clip I'd already seen. It was time-stamped 12:43 a.m., exactly the same minute I'd heard the footsteps overhead. The motel shut down the following spring. I quit before that. Couldn't stand another night shift. Sometimes, though, when I'm up late and it's raining, I still think about that hallway camera. The shadow, the open door, the barefoot prints in the carpet that led right up to the bed and stopped. And I can't help but wonder if she ever left room 12 at all.